In the late 1800s, ruins of an ancient civilization were found in Harappa, India. For over a century, it was believed to be a pre-Vedic civilization. However, startling new evidence shows that the Harappan civilization was actually a later phase of India's ancient Vedic civilization. On October 4th, 1996, scholars and scientists from around the world gathered in Atlanta, Georgia, to present the evidence confirming Vedic culture to be the world's most ancient, largest, and continuous cultural sequence.
We have enormous amount of evidence to prove to that Indian civilization is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, civilizations of the world. It's nothing short of a national misfortune that our country had to live under subjection for centuries, while we were groaning under the yoke of slavery. Hostile and partisan Western historians and some of their counterparts in India embarked upon an expedition to distort, twist, and misrepresent ancient Indian history suited to their advantage. They sought to interpret the ancient history of India within their well-contrived parameters and tailored specifications. It is, however, heartening to note that some of our historians and some Western historians have done a commendable job by presenting the ancient history of our country in a right perspective. On my part, I would like to urge the vital importance of an unbiased approach to the crux of the problem at today's meeting. Untarnished and unvarnished antiquity of Indian civilization, popularly known as the Indus Valley civilization vis-a-vis Vedic civilization.
The terms Harappan, Mohenjo-daro, and Indus Valley civilization all refer to the civilization that has been discovered in the northwest part of India. It is now clear that this was a Vedic civilization.
Blessed people from India, I think we all should pray together that God may bless India and God may bless us, that we could carry this convention to all over the world and to scholarly work and tell the world what we really know. Let them know what Macaulay wanted to teach us. What we learn in our schools in India is not truth. What Mr. Nehru wrote in his book, Discovery of whatever that thing was, that Aryans invade India. And those kind of big people who was our first Prime Minister, those are the culprits who teach us. And I think God bless India that it should not happen again.
Yeah, that message will go from here.
Modern scholars have speculated that the science of astronomy had its origins in Babylon around 700 BC. However, this theory is not corroborated by the evidence. The astronomy of the ancient Vedic literatures dates back to a minimum of 5,000 years, as verified in the Vedanta Jyoti.
When you read the chapter states very clearly that what we are trying to do is to represent the year. And there is a solar year and there is a lunar year. It so turns out that what they were trying to do was to express the fact that the solar year and the lunar year are not harmonized, because the solar year is 365.24 days, the lunar year is 354.2 days or so. There is a difference of 11 days. So what they were trying to do was first of all represent the number of days in a year in terms of the area of the altar. But also in the Shastra itself it's stated that these altars should be built to slightly increasing areas in a sequence of 95 years. And when you analyze it, you realize that what they are trying to do is that as you go from one year to another year, trying to harmonize the solar year and the lunar year, you need to add some more extra days. Then after 95 years, you get a wonderful correspondence, a wonderful synchronization, not exact even then, but a wonderful synchronization which sort of harmonizes the lunar year and the solar year. Which of course tells us that certainly by the time of the Kshatrapati Brahmins, there was a very detailed observational astronomy at the basis of this theory, which itself was quite alarming from the point of view of history of ideas, because the standard view until about 5 or 10 years ago was that observational astronomy can be seen to have arisen in Babylon only about 600 or 700 BC. Well, it's not too hard for a person 5, 6, or 7,000 years ago to have taken a pole of a certain height and made a person walk to a distance a multiple of certain heights of the pole. And if this multiple is exactly 108, the size of the pole would turn out to be exactly the size of the disk of the moon or the sun. And what would that mean? That would mean that the sun is 108 sun diameters away from the earth, and the moon is 108 moon diameters away from the earth. And once you see that, very elementary geometry will also tell you that in a circle with a radius of 108, you have a circumference, half circumference, that is the half circle of exactly 339, which means that you have exactly 339 disks of the sun, one placed on another on an average day from sunrise to sunset. We find that described in fact in the earliest known manual of astronomy that has come down to mankind anywhere, which is Vedanta Jyotish. Now Vedanta Jyotish has an inner date of 1300 BC. And people have known it for a long time, but in spite of this inner date, people have dismissed this inner date because they've said, well, there was no other corroborating evidence that the ancient Indians knew astronomy, so that although the document says that it's 1300 BC, we must assign it to a time which is later to the time that the Greeks and the Babylonians learned their geometry and their astronomy. But now, because we have a lot of new independent evidence from the Vedic code and from the altered astronomy, that we cannot discount the inner evidence that exists in the Vedic text itself. It's not that we are forcing our meaning. Look at the Kshatrapati Brahmana. It's stated that the number of mantras equals the number of muhurts in 40 years. So that people at that time were quite aware of this astronomical significance. And it's only that people had decided to completely ignore it. Questions have been asked. How is it that in the Indian literature, for example in the Mahabharata, there are statements about possibilities which could not be related to the science of its time. But how could people in Mahabharata, as we all know, have conceived of dividing up of an embryo into 100 parts, as in the case of the Kaurav brothers? Or how could they have conceived of space travel, for example, in the episode of the Saurabh battle, and so on and so forth. My good friend John Darrow, one of the world's most foremost astronomers and historians of science, asked me, how come these three youngsters, which definitely are as old as 500 or 600 years, how come the three-dimensional three youngsters show triangles whose angles add up to more than 180 degrees? Because these ideas of non-Euclidean geometry arose only about 200 years ago. So that is there a possibility that intuition or consciousness or awareness reflecting on itself could access knowledge? And if it is, then what does that have to do with the scientific method? And what does that have to do with the future of science? Thank you.
Auspicious that Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, should have such an important part in shining light on the true truths of ancient India. It is obvious that the Aryan Indo-European theories evolved out of the colonial era's expansionist mold. With these theories now exposed as false, there are many questions that remain, quote-unquote, officially unanswered. Many aspects of ancient Indian history demand to be reviewed, researched, and in many cases revised. For example, Alexander the Great's ambiguous retreat from India. Why would his victorious armies mutiny on the threshold of their goal, India? And mysteriously, after allegedly defeating the powerful king Kuru or Poros, the Greeks decide to mutiny and march back to Persia. These inconsistencies are analyzed by H.D. Seth in his paper, Was Poros the Victor at the Battle of Jhelum? Also, the ancient Ethiopic text covering the life of Alexander reveals a picture of a defeated Alexander. This is edited and translated by E.A.W. Batch. Manu finds common usage in many cultures, as in the Vedic Manu, the Teutonic Manus, in the first Egyptian king Menes, and in the Polynesian culture, especially Hawaii, we have the Menahuni. Danu is a Vedic progenitor goddess, and in the Celtic tradition, Danu is also a progenitor goddess, as in the Tuatha De Danann, the children of Danu. Also, we find the word Arya is found in many cultures, as in the Ayar founders of the Incas, or in the Polynesian word Ari'i, or in Hawaiian Ali'i, meaning chief or noble. We also have the Era of Ireland, and the word aristocrat also has its roots in the word Arya. In Sumerian, we have the word Ara, meaning lofty, and some say the very name Sumeria comes from the Sanskrit combination of the words Soma and Arya. The first Greek king is said to have come from Gaia. If this is read as Greek, he would be thought of as coming from the earth. However, if read as Sanskrit, Gaia becomes Gaya, the famous holy city. Instead of coming out of the earth, it makes much more sense for him to come from an actual historical place. In the Nordic tradition, heaven is called Himmel, very close to the word Himalaya, and the location of Kailash. And heaven was also known as Kailan to the Greeks, and note the close similarity to Kailash. The prevalence of swastikas worldwide has also not been adequately explained, nor has the prevalence of the name Rama. Rama is found in the Vedic culture, in Egyptian history, Assyrian history, the Native American, especially amongst the Incas, in Europe, Arabia, etc. We find the name and the word Rama to have the same divine and auspicious connotations wherever it is used. The evidences of a common Vedic world heritage are so prevalent that it obviously took a calculated effort to distort the truth. The truth in history is solid and immutable, regardless of the many distortions. For the careful and committed researcher, solid truths can be found, thus proving the phrase Satyam Eva Jayate. The accuracy of the Vedic sciences, such as Shalva Sutras, as evidenced in an important book by N.S. Rajarama, The Politics of History, and the self-evident truths relating to matters, both mundane and spiritual, and its continuity throughout the ages up to the present day, all point to an organic culture that is in synchronicity with the natural laws of the universe. The Aryan Indo-European race, invasion, migration, linguistic theories were invented to explain the obvious proofs of an extensive and very ancient Vedic civilization. But now, with these theories proven false, we are left with a vacuum. Only the historical truths of the Vedic scriptures and traditions can justly and accurately fill this void, and the implications of this demand a complete review of the current theories of not only ancient Indian history, but of the history of the entire world. Thank you very much.
Refers to who we are, informs our being. I think that's precisely what the whole Vedic system is. Who are we? What is the nature of this science, and how do we express it? This is expressed in this mythic, riddle, full of riddle language. But all the region of the northwest, and there was only some time later that it totally dried out. So you had three phases: the ocean-going Sarasvati, the Vinashana Sarasvati ending in a series of lakes, and then Sarasvati more or less finishing all together.
I was surprised they were still wondering if there was any validity to the Aryan invasion.
Well, they're holding it together under linguistic grounds, not under archaeological grounds. And so they're creating new models.
Today, we are very proud to welcome Professor B.B. Lal. Professor B.B. Lal was the Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India from 1968 to 1972. Professor Lal has a large number of excavations to his credit, and many of his extensive explorations have confirmed the truths of the Mahabharata and the historical basis of the Ramayana. So please, welcome Professor B.B. Lal.
The topic of my talk is India adds new dimensions to the Indus civilization. People here would be more interested in knowing a correlation between the Harappan civilization and the Vedic culture. Sometimes facts are stranger than fiction. And one such example is that the Indus, which gave its name to India, is no longer within the bounds of India. Would you believe me that in August 1947, there was not even a single site of the civilization left on the Indian side of the border? And you will be delighted to know that Indian archaeologists took up the challenge, and in a big way. Within a period of 25 years or so, they plotted on the map of India to harbor from field 800 sites, and that was 1984. Since then, quite a few sites have been added, but more than 1,000 sites of the Indus civilization are available to us within the boundaries of India. In fact, the concentration of sites is so much on the Sarasvati system, Sarasvati and its tributary, that people are inclined to call it a Sarasvati civilization. Take the site of Kalibanga. It has given to us the earliest plowed agricultural field anywhere brought to light through an excavation in the world. Anywhere in the world. It is dated to the first half of the 3rd millennium BC. Kalibanga has given evidence of what we have called fire altars. These are not to be confused with the Parsi fire altars. We have a very clear picture how this Harappan civilization evolved. In fact, we have now a continuous story from about 4500 BC and through the 4th and 3rd millennium BC, a continuous picture which shows that there was an indigenous development of the civilization, and all those ideas that it was imported from the West are really based. But an important contribution of Subhash is that it has yielded the remains of the horse, which is very important insofar as the Indus civilization is concerned. Because one of the objections for even being considered a candidate for the Vedic culture was that since no horse, no idol.
The finding in India of a 30,000-year-old horse skeleton completely discredits the theory that horses were introduced to India by nomadic Aryans. Evidence also proves that the chariot was an indigenous development to India. The numerous Vedic fire pits found throughout the Indus civilization also confirm the Vedic basis of India's ancient civilization.
Then we have evidence of pillared structures. You see, nowhere in the Indus civilization have we found stone pillars. Here is the site where we have them. And in fact, if they had not come out of an excavation, people would have said, well, no, perhaps these are Ashokan pillars. Since they come from a definite excavation, they are not to be accepted. So there are quite a few things, and then we have got a very clear story through these excavations over the last several years of the evolution. There is no evidence whatsoever of a sudden end of the civilization, one fine morning it ended. No, nothing of the kind. Much less to be ascribed to the Aryans. There is a continuity over the years. The Sarasvati system, Banavali, has been extensively excavated by my colleague, Mr. Basdeo. He has found the evidence of a moat which went down the fortification. And this is for the first time that we have noted that there was a system not only of fortification, but of having a moat around. The conception of damming stream decks, seasonal stream decks, to accumulate water to be used later on is there. Dalavira has also yielded an inscription with the letters of which at this side, there are 10 letters running, and this is the biggest inscription ever found. Here is the inscription. It's about a foot, more than a foot in height. We do have evidence for the first time anywhere in the architecture of the Archean civilization. Houses, a room was reserved where we found this sort of thing, and this we have called fire altar. Secondly, the placement of this, there is a wall here, and the placement of these things were such that whoever used them and performed whatever the ritual was had to face these. But another important aspect was that near this was a well, and we have a bathing platform and a train, which is suggestive of the fact that with the ritual was connected a ceremonial bathing. So next one we have got a chariot. This dockyard was connected through a continuous system of water. It joined the Gulf of Camden. With the high tide, the boats could come up. They were anchored here. The material was unloaded. New material was loaded. And another high tide came. And it receded. With the receding tide, the boat went back to the area. We have got a sacrificial gate. This is the modern primary field. The narrow one and the wide one. You will be surprised to learn that it continues to be the same as in Harappan. Even the gauge of the placard, the distance between the two rings, continues to be the same as in Harappan.
All of this evidence not only confirms the continuity of India's civilization, but also confirms the validity of the Vedic scriptures. No longer can they be ignored as mythology, but they can be taken as authentic guides to help us understand our past, solve present-day problems, and show us the way to a better tomorrow.
Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we know a written way from 5,000 years ago. It is written in the scripture. Before scripture was man to man, guru to disciple. Guru given to disciple that consciousness, that's called Shruti mantra. But when it is written form have got, that is 5,000 years ago. It is discovered in Mohenjo-daro, there are Srimad Bhagavad slokas, Mahabharata sloka, many Purana sloka. In Mohenjo-daro, they are engraved, the stone engraved. We have got that record. Then here we have no doubt. It was 5,000 years ago written. But Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Everywhere we are saying Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Krishna
we are proud to announce the formation of the World Association for Vedic Studies, WAVE.
Become a member, or for inquiries, contact Shyam Tiwari, 3515 River Summit Trail, Duluth, Georgia, 30097. Phone number area code 770-232-0939. Email srtiwari@hotmail.com.
Sun